Bullies beat a Muslim girl into a coma, then her father destroys the entire school. We have a dream of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of this month. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and become part of our dream too. The bell hadn't rung yet, but the hallways of Westbridge High were already alive with noise, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, laughter bouncing off tired beige walls. In the middle of all that chaos, Amina Farid walked with her backpack pulled close to her shoulders and her eyes fixed on a point straight ahead. Her navy hijab was wrapped neatly, as her mother always helped her do in the morning, but today even that familiar comfort felt fragile. She could feel them behind her. Whispering. Watching. The way some students slowed when they passed her, as if she carried something contagious. The way others made sure their words were loud enough to reach her, even when they pretended not to be talking to her at all. "There goes Isis," someone muttered behind her. She swallowed hard and kept walking. She had learned that if she stopped every time a word stung, she would never move at all. Her locker was near the end of the hall, right where the corridor bent sharply and the teachers almost never walked without a reason. It used to be just a place to stash books and notebooks, but lately it felt more like a target painted on the wall. Amina spun the lock, fingers moving from muscle memory, pretending not to notice the three boys leaning against the lockers opposite hers. Tyler, Chase, and Logan, the kind of boys teachers called energetic and a bit of a handful when they were in the room, and good kids at heart when they broke something. Tyler smirked as soon as he saw her. "Morning, scarf girl," he drawled. "Nice parachute." Chase laughed, too loud, like he needed the sound to prove something. Logan didn't laugh, not really, but he didn't say anything either. He never did. Amina's hand shook slightly as she opened her locker, praying silently that today, maybe, they'd get bored and walk away. 2 lockers down, Sophia Ramos watched from the corner of her eye, pretending to scroll through her phone. She hated this. Every part of it. The way Tyler puffed his chest out when Amina passed, the way Chase parroted his every insult, the way Logan stared at the floor and let it happen. Sophia had been Amina's lab partner once, back when the year was new and everything still felt wide open. Amina had smiled easily then. She had laughed softly when Sophia mispronounced her name and patiently repeated it until she got it right. "Amina," she had said, tapping syllables on the desk. Now that laugh was gone. Replaced by quiet, tight shoulders, and eyes that stayed fixed on textbooks or tiles. Sophia told herself she couldn't intervene. Tyler and his crew already made her life difficult enough, but every time she turned away, guilt followed her down the hall like a shadow. Far from the noise, across town, Omar Farid sat in his small office above the auto shop, staring at a spreadsheet he wasn't really reading. The sound of tools and engines drifted up through the floor, rhythmic, steady, the music of a life he had built with his own calloused hands. On the wall beside him hung 3 framed things: his mechanic's certification, a photo of Amina in her middle school graduation robe, and a worn prayer calligraphy his father had given him when he left their home country years ago. He checked his phone out of habit, expecting the usual morning message from Amina, some small joke, a selfie, a question about homework. Nothing. A tiny knot formed in his chest. It wasn't like her to stay quiet. He told himself she was just busy, that teenagers didn't text every second. Still, his fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to send, "How's your day going, Habibti?" In the end, he didn't. He set the phone face down on the desk instead, unaware that this was the morning everything in their lives was about to crack open. He had no idea that while he tried to balance numbers, his daughter was trying to balance fear. And that the school he trusted with her future was about to fail her in a way that would change all of them forever. Amina closed her locker gently, hoping the quiet click would be the end of it. But silence rarely protected her here. Tyler stepped forward, blocking the hallway. His grin widened the way it always did when he sensed fear. "Why don't you ever say good morning?" he asked, leaning too close. "Oh, right. You people don't do mornings. You pray or something." Chase snickered, elbowing Logan, who kept his eyes pinned on the floor tiles as if they held the secrets of the universe. Amina felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she fought to keep her voice calm. Excuse me. I need to get to class. Her tone was steady, but her hands clutched her backpack straps tight enough to hurt. She tried stepping around them, but Tyler moved again, mirroring her steps like it was a game. Say it, he pressed. Say good morning. Before she could reply, Chase flicked the end of her hijab. Hard. The fabric tugged at her neck. A gasp slipped from her lips before she could stop it. Sophia, still pretending to be absorbed in her phone, flinched at the sound. She wanted to step in, to shout, to do anything other than stand frozen, but fear sat on her shoulders like an anchor. She imagined Tyler turning his cruelty on her and felt her throat close. So she stayed where she was, guilt flooding her stomach as Amina stood alone. Come on, Chase mocked. Don't you talk? Amina swallowed. The hallway had emptied. The teachers had all retreated to their classrooms. She had no witnesses. No backup. Just 3 boys who saw her silence as permission. Please, she whispered. I don't want trouble. Tyler leaned in. Trouble's already here. Moments later, the bell rang, its shrill echo slashing through the tension. Students hurried past, giving the scene quick, uneasy glances but not stopping. No one wanted Tyler's attention. No one wanted trouble either. Logan shifted uncomfortably and muttered, "Let's just go, man." But Tyler wasn't finished. He shoved Amina's shoulder as he passed. Not hard enough to knock her down, yet, but hard enough to make his message clear. She stumbled, caught herself, and watched them walk away laughing, the sound echoing long after they disappeared around the corner. Sophia lingered for a second before hurrying after them, her heart pounding. She hated herself for walking away. She hated how small she felt beside their cruelty. But most of all, she hated that Amina's eyes, usually warm, looked hollow now. Later that morning, in room 204, Amina tried to breathe slowly as the announcements droned on. She focused on the teacher's words, though they blurred like ink in water. Her ribs ached where Tyler's shove had landed. She prayed silently for the day to end without more trouble. But trouble had already chosen her, long before she stepped into school that morning. Trouble was patient. It waited for the right moment and the right corner. The one where no teacher walked. The one where no camera pointed. And that moment was coming, closer than she realized. Closer than any of them realized. Lunch period was usually Amina's safest time. She'd sit by the window in the far corner of the cafeteria, reading or finishing homework while the noise washed over her like background static. But today, she wasn't hungry. Her stomach churned from the morning incidents, and all she wanted was quiet. So she slipped out early and headed toward the east stairwell, a narrow, echoing place few students used unless they were late or hiding. She thought she'd have 5 minutes alone before her next class. 5 minutes to breathe. 5 minutes to forget Tyler's voice in her ear. She didn't know the 3 boys were already there. Tyler spotted her first. Well, he said, stepping out from behind the railing. Look who came to us. Chase grinned, cracking his knuckles for show. Logan hovered behind them, shoulders drawn tight, eyes flicking between Amina and the exit. Amina froze. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She'd made a mistake. This stairwell was too quiet, too hidden. No teachers. No students passing by. Just her. And them. I don't want any trouble, Amina said softly, pressing her back against the wall. Please. Let me go. Tyler smirked. But you keep acting like you're better than us. Walking around like you're special. Like we should feel bad for you. Chase stepped closer, blocking the bottom stair. Say you're not, he said. Say you're nothing. Amina shook her head, voice trembling. I won't say that. For a split second, the hallway held its breath. Then Tyler shoved her. Hard. She stumbled against the wall, her shoulders slamming into cold cement. Pain shot down her side. Before she could recover, Chase pushed her again, laughing, imitating the way she caught her balance. Logan muttered, Guys, stop, this is stupid. But Tyler shot him a glare, one of those sharp, commanding looks that reminded Logan where he stood in their hierarchy. So Logan stepped back. Silent. Watching. Amina tried to bolt for the stairs, but Tyler blocked her. Chase grabbed her backpack strap and yanked, throwing her off balance. The world tilted. Her breath hitched. "Please," she cried, but her plea was swallowed by the echoing walls. Tyler's voice cut through the air. "Maybe if we knock some sense into you, you'll learn your place." Logan whispered, "Tyler. Enough." But Tyler didn't listen. A shove. Another shove. A grab at her hijab. She slapped his hand away instinctively. That was all it took. Tyler's face twisted with humiliation and rage. "Don't touch me," he shouted. And he lunged. Amina's head struck the edge of the stairwell railing with a dull, sickening thud. Everything fell silent. Chase froze, color draining from his face. Logan staggered backward, hands shaking. Amina crumpled to the floor, her body folding like a dropped sheet. Her eyes fluttered once, then closed. Bro, she's not moving." Chase gasped. Tyler stared, breathing in sharp, panicked bursts. She's faking. She has to be." But she wasn't faking. And deep down, they all knew it. Sophia, walking down the hall at that exact moment, heard the echo of something hitting metal. Something wrong. Something heavy. She felt the sound like a punch in her chest. Against every instinct of fear she had, she ran toward the stairwell. She turned the corner and screamed. Because Amina wasn't just hurt. Amina was unconscious. And everything in Sophia's heart told her this was worse than anything she could have imagined. Worse than anything she could undo. And far across town, Omar Farid's phone buzzed on his desk. A call that would shatter everything. A call that would awaken a storm the school was not prepared to face. The phone on Omar Farid's desk buzzed with an urgency that made his stomach twist before he even picked it up. He expected Amina's voice, maybe a forgotten lunch, maybe a request for a ride home. Something ordinary. Something safe. But when he answered, it wasn't her voice. It wasn't even a voice he recognized. "Mr. Farid?" "Yes, this is Omar. This is Principal Hart from Westbridge High. Your daughter has been injured. You need to come to the school immediately." The world stopped. For a moment, Omar didn't breathe. Didn't blink. His mind emptied except for one word, daughter. His sweet Amina, who smiled every morning even when she was tired, who left him little notes on the fridge saying have a good day, Baba, who apologized when she thought she'd bothered anyone. Injured? How? Why? His voice came out rough. What happened to her? There was a pause, a long, damning silence. We're still assessing the situation. That was when Omar knew. They were hiding something. Something big. Something monstrous. He didn't ask another question. He didn't gather his things. He didn't lock the office door. He ran, down the stairs, through the shop, past startled employees, into his truck. His hands trembled so violently he struggled to fit the key into the ignition. When the engine roared to life, he drove faster than he had in years, every red light feeling like an insult, every second stretching out like agony. Meanwhile, at the school, chaos rippled through the halls. Students whispered in clusters, their voices low, almost frightened. Teachers tried to maintain order, but everyone knew something terrible had happened. Sophia stood near the nurse's office, arms wrapped around herself, shaking. She had been the one who found Amina. She had screamed for help, begged someone to call 911, begged the boys to explain what they'd done. But Tyler had fled. Chase too. Only Logan stayed behind, pale and shaking, mumbling, "I didn't mean for this. I didn't mean," over and over like a broken record. Inside the nurse's office, Amina lay on a stretcher, her skin nearly translucent, her eyelids unmoving, her breathing shallow and uneven. Blood matted the side of her head where it met her hijab. The nurse worked frantically, whispering prayers, though she wasn't sure what she believed. A paramedic radioed for hospital prep. Possible concussion, possible skull fracture. Unconscious. No response to stimuli. Principal Hart stood by uselessly, sweat beading at his temple. He couldn't stop replaying the security footage, showing nothing. No cameras in the east stairwell. No protection where it was needed most. Now he had a student fighting for her life and 3 boys whose actions would destroy more than their own futures. The paramedics lifted Amina carefully. As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, Omar's truck screeched into the parking lot. He leaped out before it fully stopped, sprinting toward the building like a man possessed. "Where is my daughter?" he roared, voice cracking with terror. Students scattered. Teachers froze. Because this was not the calm, soft-spoken mechanic they knew. This was a father tearing through walls with nothing but fear, love, and fury. Principal Hart rushed forward, hands raised. "Mr. Farid, please, this way, she's being taken to the ambulance." Omar didn't hear him. He didn't see anything. All he saw was the stretcher. His knees nearly buckled. "Amina, Habibti." "Baba's here," he whispered, touching her cold hand with trembling fingers. But she didn't respond. Not even a flicker. When the ambulance doors closed, and the siren screamed to life, Omar climbed in beside her without asking permission. His face hardened, not with anger yet, but with a quiet, terrifying focus. Someone had hurt his daughter. Someone had put her into this condition. And he would find out who. And when he did, nothing in that school would ever be the same again. The ambulance tore through traffic, but inside it felt like time had slowed to a crawl. Omar sat rigid beside Amina, gripping the edge of the stretcher so tightly his knuckles turned white. Her small chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, each one sounded like it had to fight its way through darkness to reach him. A paramedic checked her vitals, frowning as numbers dipped and spiked. "We're almost there," she said gently, but Omar barely heard her. His world had narrowed to the rise and fall of Amina's chest, to the faint tremble in her fingers, to the silent terror pulsing through him like a second heartbeat. She looked so fragile, so breakable, like the world had dropped all its weight on her tiny shoulders. He couldn't stop thinking about the morning, how he almost texted her, how he ignored the instinct tugging at him. "How's your day going, Habibti?" If he had sent that message, would she have answered? Would he have sensed something was wrong sooner? Could he have stopped this? Guilt clawed at him. He wasn't supposed to protect the whole world, but he was supposed to protect his daughter. And now she lay unconscious, her hijab soaked with dried blood, her face pale under the ambulance lights. Omar leaned closer, whispering through a breaking voice, "Baba's here. Stay with me, sweetheart. Please." At the hospital, nurses rushed her inside before Omar could catch his breath. They pushed him back as they surrounded her, moving with quick, precise motions, oxygen mask, vitals monitor, for line. A doctor glanced at him only long enough to say, "Sir, please wait outside. We'll update you as soon as we stabilize her." Omar's chest tightened. Wait? Outside? Away from her? The words ignited something fierce inside him. "No," he growled, stepping forward. "I'm not leaving her." But a nurse gently touched his arm. "Sir, please. Let us help her." Those words, "help her," cut through his rage enough to let him collapse into a stiff hospital chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. Across town, the news of the incident hit the school like an explosion. Sophia sat in the counselor's office, her leg bouncing uncontrollably, tears streaking her cheeks. She told them everything, how she heard the noise, how she found Amina, how the boys ran. Her voice cracked with guilt every time she said, "I should have stopped them. I should have done something." The counselor tried to reassure her, but Sophia didn't believe it. She felt every second of her silence like a knife. Meanwhile, Principal Hart held Logan in his office. The boy sat hunched, shoulders shaking, hands covering his face. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," he whispered. Tyler said. He said it was just to scare her. But fear didn't stop what happened. Fear didn't protect Amina. Fear didn't undo the sound of her skull hitting metal. And while the school scrambled, the hospital worked, and the city whispered, Omar sat alone in the waiting room, elbows on his knees, fingers tangled in his hair. The clock above him ticked louder with each passing second. He felt the weight of every minute she was unconscious pressing against his lungs, stealing air he desperately needed. When the doctor finally approached, Omar stood instantly, chest tight. The doctor sighed softly. Mr. Farid, your daughter is in a coma. The words didn't just hit him. They shattered him. Omar staggered, gripping the wall for balance. A sound escaped him, raw, broken, almost primal. Will she wake up? He whispered. We don't know yet, the doctor answered. But what we do know is this was no accident. Omar lifted his head. And in his eyes, something changed. Something dark. Something resolute. No, he said quietly. It wasn't. And at that exact moment, he made a silent promise, one that would soon shake the entire school to its foundation. Whoever did this to his little girl was about to face a father who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. Omar didn't go home. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. For hours, he sat beside Amina's hospital bed, holding her cold hand between both of his, whispering prayers over and over. Machines beeped softly around her, each sound a reminder that she was still here, but barely. Her face looked impossibly small against the white pillow, her eyelids unmoving, her breathing shallow under the rise and fall of the ventilator. Omar brushed a strand of hair that slipped from beneath her hijab. Fight, Habibti, he whispered. Please fight. But the room gave no answer. Only the machines. When dawn broke, something inside Omar hardened into stone. He stood, gently kissed Amina's forehead, and walked into the hallway with a purpose that made the nurses step back instinctively. He moved like a man on a mission, slow, steady, unstoppable. He didn't ask permission. He didn't look for guidance. He went straight to the front desk. Where's Principal Hart? He demanded. The secretary stuttered. He said he'd be coming to check in. Call him, Omar ordered. Now. The woman hesitated. One look at Omar's face, grief carved into steel, made her obey. 10 minutes later, Principal Hart walked through the doors, pale and sweating. He had been awake all night too, but for entirely different reasons. He opened his mouth, but Omar cut him off. Tell me exactly what happened to my daughter. Hart swallowed, teeth chattering subtly. Mr. Farid. I'm so sorry. We don't have full details yet. The camera in that stairwell was not working. Omar finished coldly. Convenient. Hart shrank. We believe the boys involved, names, Omar said. Now. Hart hesitated. We can't release the names of minors without, Omar stepped closer, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. My daughter is fighting for her life because those boys nearly killed her. You will give me their names. Hart's resolve crumbled. Tyler Jennings. Chase Moore. Logan Blake. Omar repeated the names like he was committing them to memory. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't shaking. He was too calm in a way that made Hart's blood run cold. The moment Omar turned toward the exit, Hart called after him weakly, Mr. Farid, please, don't do anything reckless. Omar didn't even slow down. What they did to her was reckless. What I do now will be justice. By midday, everyone at Westbridge High knew he was coming. Students whispered like wildfire. Teachers paced nervously. The superintendent rushed to the campus, trying to prepare damage control. Tyler and Chase were pulled from class and locked in an empty office, the door guarded by security. Logan sat alone in a classroom, crying silently into trembling hands. Sophia, meanwhile, stood outside the counselor's office, staring at the floor, knowing this was only the beginning. Amina's absence echoed through the school like a warning bell. At 1:14 p.m., Omar's truck pulled into the school parking lot. He stepped out wearing the same clothes from yesterday, wrinkled, stained with Amina's tears, but his posture was straight, unwavering. Students peered out windows as he walked toward the building. Teachers exchanged anxious looks, unsure if they should intervene or stay out of his way. When he pushed open the doors, the entire main office fell silent. Principal Hart rushed forward. "Mr. Farid, please, we understand your anger, but we need to handle this through proper channels." Omar didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Proper channels failed my daughter. The room froze. He stepped past Hart, past security, past the stunned staff, until he reached the middle of the hallway, the heart of the school. And with the quiet strength of a man who had lost everything, he spoke loud enough for every classroom to hear. "Everyone who hurt my daughter. Everyone who watched. Everyone who allowed it. Will answer for it." A chill swept through the halls. Students held their breath. Teachers exchanged wide-eyed looks. Because Omar wasn't just a grieving father. He wasn't just a man broken by tragedy. He was a storm walking on two legs, slow, steady, unstoppable, and the school had no idea what was about to hit them. The hallways of Westbridge High had never been so silent. Even during fire drills, even during lockdown practice, even on the first day of school when nerves ran high, there had always been murmurs, shuffling shoes, whispered jokes. But now? Nothing. Not a breath. Not a sound. Omar walked forward, and the silence followed him like a shadow. Every door cracked open a few inches as teachers peeked out with wide, frightened eyes. Students sat frozen at their desks, barely daring to blink. The grief in Omar's eyes was unmistakable. But it was the determination, the cold, unshakable resolve, that made everyone step back. Principal Hart hurried beside him, voice trembling. "Mr. Farid, please, we're doing everything we can. Police are investigating. The boys have been restrained. The district is." Omar stopped walking. He turned to Hart slowly. "You did nothing," he said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "No cameras in the stairwell. No staff in the halls. No protection for a girl you knew was being harassed." Hart stuttered. "We didn't know the extent." Omar's expression hardened. "You knew enough." Teachers gathered at the ends of hallways, watching the confrontation. Some had tears in their eyes, some guilt, some quiet agreement, because they had seen things too. They had ignored too much. Fear. Exhaustion. Bureaucracy. All of it added up to the silence that had failed Amina. Security escorted Tyler and Chase out of the office, their faces pale, their bravado gone. They froze when they saw Omar. Tyler swallowed so hard his throat bobbed visibly. Chase took a half-step behind him, hiding. "Mr. Farid," Tyler began, but the words shriveled in his mouth. Omar didn't shout. Didn't rush. He simply looked at them, eyes dark with grief so deep it made both boys tremble. "Tell me what you did to my daughter," Omar said. Tyler's breath shook. I didn't mean." "No. Not what you meant." Omar stepped closer. "What you did." Tyler's eyes darted around helplessly. We just wanted to scare her. You put her in a coma." The words echoed down the hall. Students flinched. A teacher choked back a sob. Chase whimpered, "We didn't think." "That," Omar said softly, "is exactly the problem." Before they could answer, police officers arrived, called earlier by the superintendent. They moved carefully, as if approaching a man moments away from collapse. "Mr. Farid," one officer said gently, "please step back. We need to escort the students to the station." Omar stared at the officers, chest rising with deep, controlled breaths. "You will not protect them from consequences," he said. "Not this time." The officer nodded. "We won't." Then a small, trembling voice broke the silence. "Mr. Farid." Everyone turned. Logan stood at the end of the hallway, tears streaming down his face. He wasn't guarded. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. He walked slowly toward Omar, hands shaking so violently he had to grip his elbows just to steady himself. "I'm sorry," Logan said, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." He looked like a ghost of the boy he was yesterday. "She didn't deserve it. I should have stopped them. I wanted to. I swear I did. I told them to stop. I told them." His voice cracked into a sob. "I didn't touch her. But I didn't help her either." He met Omar's eyes through tears. "I'm sorry. Please, please don't hate me." The hallway felt like it was holding its breath again. Even Tyler and Chase stared in shock. Logan had broken their unspoken rule of silence. Omar walked toward the boy, and for a moment everyone feared the worst. But Omar didn't raise a hand. He didn't shout. He rested a heavy, trembling hand on Logan's shoulder. "You were the only one who stayed," Omar said quietly. "That doesn't erase what happened. But it matters." Logan sobbed harder. Then Omar turned to the officers. "These boys go with you," he said firmly. And then he looked around the school with eyes that had seen enough pain to crack steel. "I'm not done here." The officers led the boys away. Students whispered. Teachers stared. The superintendent stepped closer, opening his mouth to calm the situation, but Omar raised a hand. "No," he said. "Not yet." He walked toward the main office, toward the heart of the school's leadership, toward the system that had failed his daughter. And everyone realized the storm was only halfway through. And the next wave would hit harder than anything yet. Omar walked into the main office with a presence so heavy that every conversation, every rustling paper, every ringing phone immediately died. Secretaries backed away from their desks. A guidance counselor froze mid-step. The superintendent, who had been rehearsing apologies, straightened his tie with shaking fingers. Omar's face was calm, but it was the kind of calm that comes just before the sky splits open. He stopped in the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning every corner. "You failed my daughter," he said softly. The softness made it more terrifying. "Not one of you protected her. Not one of you saw what was happening. And now she might never wake up." Principal Hart stepped forward, voice cracking. "Mr. Farid, please, there are procedures, investigations, hearings." Omar turned to him, and Hart stopped speaking as if someone had cut the air from his lungs. "Procedures?" Omar repeated. "You had procedures when she was bullied. You had procedures when she was followed in hallways. When she was mocked. When she was pushed. When she asked for help." He moved closer. "And every time, you did nothing." Teachers had gathered at the door, watching through the glass with faces full of guilt and fear. Some had seen Amina cry after class. Some had seen boys whisper behind her. Some had heard slurs muttered under breath. Not one had stepped in strongly enough to stop the spiral that led to yesterday. The superintendent tried to steady himself. "Mr. Farid, we understand your pain. But please, destroying the school won't bring your daughter back." Omar turned slowly. His eyes were dark, hollow, relentless. "I'm not here to destroy the building," he said. "I'm here to destroy the system that let this happen." He pulled out a thick envelope and dropped it on the front desk. The loud slap made everyone flinch. Inside were statements from students, Sophia's, Logan's, and others who had found the courage to finally speak. Screenshots of texts. Emails Amina had sent asking for help. Photos of Tyler blocking her locker. Notes teachers dismissed as drama. Every ignored warning. Every overlooked sign. "This," Omar said, tapping the stack, "is everything you pretended not to see." He stepped back. "And copies have already been sent to the school board, the district attorney, the state education office, and the local news." Hart's face drained of color. The superintendent stumbled back into a chair. A secretary covered her mouth with both hands. Omar wasn't done. He pulled another document from his pocket, a signed petition with hundreds of parent signatures gathered overnight. Effective immediately, he said, every family who signed this is requesting your resignations. He pointed at Hart, then at the superintendent, then at 2 assistant principals who had ignored Amina's complaints. All of you. Out. Hart's voice cracked. You can't force us. Omar stepped closer. You're right. I can't. He pointed to the hallway behind him, where parents had begun pouring in, shoulder to shoulder, eyes fierce, voices rising like a wave. But we can. The crowd surged. Mothers who had watched their children suffer. Fathers who had bitten their tongues for years. Students who had been silent until now. Voices filled the hall, demanding accountability, justice, change. It wasn't violence. It wasn't chaos. It was a reckoning. Security escorted Hart out under a rain of furious, grieving looks. The superintendent followed, pale and shaking, while teachers lowered their heads in shame. The school board, summoned by Omar's evidence, arrived within an hour. By afternoon, every leader responsible for ignoring Amina's suffering had been removed pending investigation. Westbridge High fell, not from force, but from truth. That evening, Omar returned to the hospital. He sat beside Amina, took her hand gently, and whispered, "The school will never hurt you again." Baba made sure. Machines beeped softly. The room smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. And then, so faint he almost thought he imagined it, Amina's fingers moved. Just a twitch. Just a breath of life. But enough to make Omar crumble to his knees, tears spilling down his face. She was fighting. She was still here. And though the road ahead would be long, one thing was certain. Her father had already torn down the world that failed her. Brick by brick, voice by voice, name by name. And built something safer in its place. If you made it this far, subscribe, leave your like, and tell us where you're watching from. Thank you, and see you next time.